Hello, students. Welcome back to my classroom. I'm back to Michigan, US, away from the warm weather in Minxiong, CCU. Right now, if you look outside of my office window, it is still snowing quite a bit. So very different environment. But I'm glad to be able to share this lecture with you, this talk with you. What I plan to do in this lecture is to go over the quiz that you took on March 7 relating to the materials for chapter 2. So I just like to at least go over those questions, at least for you to know the answer so that some of them could be still relevant for midterm exam, and then you know how to respond to those questions. So let me see if I can share Control Shift plus D, Control Shift plus D, the screen with you. I suppose I can do that. This is screen number 2, share. All right. Right now, let's go over one question at a time. So question number 1, I hope that you can still see the content, is of the 500,000 people age 16 plus in a particular country, 300,000 people are in the labor force. Of these, 240,000 are employed. That means gainfully employed. And 60,000 are unemployed according to our definition in chapter 2. So what is the unemployment rate? The answer is B. That should be easy and straightforward. Basically, you are dividing the 60,000 to the 300,000 to arrive at the unemployment rate, official statistics. Number 2, the single most important phenomenon in the US labor market in the second half of the 20th century was what? The answer is B, the drastic increase in the labor force participation rate of females. By the way, all these you can find source in the book, chapter 2. If you go there, and I don't have, well, I have the book with me, but I cannot pinpoint the specific page, but definitely they are there. Number 3, which of the following is not a property of standard indifference curves in a leisure consumption model? And the answer is E, indifference curves intersect with one another, which is not correct. All these properties about indifference curve in our analysis, like A and B and so on and so forth, but not E. The indifference curve cannot intersect. Okay. All right. Then we move on to number 4. An increase in non-labor income while holding the wage rate constant would do what? Would do E, shift the budget line upward while maintaining the same slope. So it's a parallel upward shift of the budget line because the only thing happened is the increase in non-labor income. Nothing happened to the wage rate. We're holding the wage rate constant. Number 5, when the tax rate on wages falls so that the take-home wage or effective wage increases, what happened to the budget line? This time, the answer is A, because the the tax on wage rate falls. So people are going to get more take-home wage after tax. That essentially is an increase in the real wage. Okay? So that is going to do a rotate out along the consumption axis. Essentially, the slope of the budget line is the wage rate, the real wage rate. The real wage rate goes up, that means the slope of the budget line is going to be steeper. And so it's A. Number 6, according to the substitution effect, in response to an increase in her wage, a person would do what? Answer is C, would increase hours work because leisure has become relatively more expensive than consumption. The substitution effect says that if leisure becomes more expensive because the price of leisure is wage, okay? It's the opportunity cost of leisure is wage. So increasing wage is an increase in the price of leisure. Leisure becomes more expensive, and the substitution effect is to substitute away from the more expensive thing like leisure toward the cheaper thing. In this case, it's consumption. So the answer is C. Number 7, what would a person do if the market wage is less than his or her reservation wage? Of course, you got to understand what is reservation wage. Again, go back to read chapter 2. I also mentioned this in my last lecture in person with you last week, I guess Friday, March 7, that reservation wage is the minimum required compensation for the person to be wanting to participate in the labor market. So when the market wage is even less than the reservation wage, the person is not going to participate in the labor market. So the answer is E, this person will not participate in the labor force. Right? Number 8, the reservation wage likely increases when what? Okay. And the answer is D, when non-labor income increases. When non-labor income increases, the person has more income to spend, even if wage is the same. Basically, it's going to raise the person's reservation wage. Number 9, due to the added worker effect, the labor force participation rate would what? There's a section discussing about this added worker effect and discouraged worker effect because of the labor supply response due to a business cycle. Okay, you got to read that section in chapter 2. And in this particular question, the answer is A. The added worker effect is going to cause the labor force participation rate to increase during the recession, because during the recession, the primary breadwinner, the primary worker in the family lose the job or receive a wage cut. And that's going to make the secondary workers to go into the labor market to try to make up for the differences. Okay? And so that's added worker effect, increase during a recession. Number 10, the intertemporal substitution hypothesis suggests that hours of work would what? Answer is A, should be the greatest during peak wage years. Okay. Again, the intertemporal substitution hypothesis is described in somewhere in chapter 2. Basically, it says that during the life cycle of labor supply decision, when the person experience a better wage prospect, there will be substitution for like a substitution effect for increasing labor supply at that particular time point. So that is going to increase labor supply when wage prospect wage is high. Okay? You see there are 2 profiles in that chapter, in that section, the age earnings profile and the labor supply over the life cycle profile, and they're essentially the same shape. It goes up and goes down in the same way, synchronization. When wage goes up, labor supply also goes up, and that's what we have here. The greatest during the peak wage years. Question 11. The following diagram was used in the text to analyze the effect of take it or leave it cash grant on work incentives. Which one of the following is incorrect, is wrong? Okay. If you look at this picture, this is the one taken from the book. Okay? You can see this, the cash grant program. Basically, it states that when the person is not working, does not have any income, so that income is zero, this person is going to receive a cash grant from government of $1,000. Once the person start to get some income from working, this person loses the eligibility of receiving any cash grant from the government. The cash grant just dropped to zero. So compared to no cash grant available, this person is facing the budget constraint of EF. Now, with the cash grant, which is take it or leave it, this person would take it if the person has not worked at all, and therefore 110 hours of leisure, and on this point G, endowment point, corresponding to $1,000 of non-labor income. Once the person decides to work, even for 1 hour, even for 2 hours, the person's back to that budget line because the person received zero from the government. That's a very bad incentive scheme. It's very much disincentive. So that's the gist of that picture or that analysis. And as far as this question goes, you can see the which one is incorrect. A is correct, B is correct, C is correct, and all this is correct. So none of these above is incorrect. The answer is E. Okay. Now, question 12, another picture here. Answer the following question basing on the attached diagram, which was used in the text to analyze the effect of welfare program on the hours of work. Okay. And if you connect with the previous question, that was a take it or leave it, very bad program. This one is intended to be an improvement. It's a welfare reform, an improvement in the right direction, try to address the issue from earlier on, this kind of terrible cash grant program, which basically discourage people to work completely. This one trying to salvage some of the work incentive. For simplicity, assume that the program gives the welfare recipients a cash grant of $1,000 just like before, and now deducts 50 cents from the grant for every dollar the welfare recipients earns in the labor market. So that if you start to work, let's say you earn $10 wage from working, unlike the previous program, then you lose the $1,000 completely. Here, you're going to get less than $1,000 by the 50% of the wage you earn. So you earn $10 wage, you're going to get $5 deduction from that cash grant. You're going to get $995 cash grant, not zero, 995 plus the $10 wage you earn, you have the total income of $1,005, which is bigger than 1,000, right? So that might preserve some work effort, work incentive. Which of the following is true? This is the picture, the diagram that you can also read more detail from the book. The answer is C. In other words, if our model, as illustrated by this example, adequately represents how persons make work decisions, it may be impossible to develop relatively generous welfare program without substantially reducing work incentives. So as you can see in this case, before any kind of welfare program, this person would be choosing P to maximize utility, working 40 hours. Now, with this particular welfare program, the budget line actually changed to GH. In this case, the utility maximum occur at this tangency R. So person is going to be better off at a higher indifference curve U1 better than U0. But this person will be working how many hours? R indicate 10 hours because 100 hours of leisure means 10 hours of labor supply. So still, if there is no welfare program, this person is going to work 40 hours. With the welfare program, the person is better off. Government does help him or her a little bit more, but the person is not going to work like 40 hours. He's going to only work 10 hours. Better than 0 hour. The earlier cash grant program is very bad. It's 0 hour. This one at least preserves some work effort, working 10 hours. Okay, but still not ideal. There's no way for you, like answer C, to design a program which also give people, welfare recipients, money and at the same time without reducing their work incentive. This is actually reduce the work incentive a little bit less than the cash grant program, but still there is a problem. All right. So number 13, of the 500,000 people in a particular country, 300,000 people are in the labor force. That means 200,000 are not in the labor force. Of these, 240,000 are employed and 60,000 are unemployed. Of the 200,000 workers not in the labor force, 21 jobs, but have given up looking for one. So what is the unemployment rate if discouraged workers, those hidden unemployed, are counted as being unemployed? Okay, that means you got to put, the answer is C. Okay, this answer is C, 25%. That means you got to put that 20,000 people that are out of the labor force, they're discouraged workers, back to the labor force because they want a job. They just give up looking for a job. So you add that 20,000 to this 60,000 unemployed, that's going to be 80,000, and then divide over something. Right now, you're talking about 300,000 adding what? Adding that 20,000. So it's 320,000. In that 8,000 or 80,000 divided over 320,000, I think it's 1/4, it's 25%. That's how you got the answer. 14, how does the presence of an underground labor market bias the government's calculation of the labor force participation rate? So this issue about hidden unemployed comes everywhere. The answer is A. Answer is A. The official government statistic on labor force participation rate is too low because people working in the underground labor market, they are not counted, and they should have been counted as being in the labor market and employed, but they were counted out. So it's a too low statistic. Number 15, assuming consumption and leisure are both normal goods, hours worked will fall when the wage increase when the wage increases if what? The income effect dominates the substitution effect. Because we know from our earlier discussion, when wage increase, the income effect is going to induce the person to reduce labor supply. And substitution effect will cause the person to increase labor supply. So the two effects fight against each other. So if income effect is stronger than the substitution effect, in net terms, this person will end up with reducing working hours. Okay? So that's why the answer is A. 16, prior to an expanded child care subsidy program in Illinois, the labor force participation rate of single mothers in Illinois was 45%, and in Wisconsin was 48%. After Illinois expanded its child care subsidy program, the participation rate increased to 58% in Illinois and to 51% in Wisconsin. So the expanded child care program in Illinois is estimated to increase labor force participation rate of single mothers by how much? According to a difference in differences estimator. So we got to count for the difference in differences. Okay, the difference for Illinois single mother labor force participation rate is up by what's that? From 45% to 58% by 13%. However, at the same time, Wisconsin labor force participation rate of single mother went up from 48% to 51%. So there are extraneous factors that cause Wisconsin and Illinois to have their female labor force participation rate all go up. That's not because of the particular policy happening in Illinois. We need to take away from that. Okay, so that means 13% minus 3%, because the 3% case in Wisconsin, which went up from 48% to 51%, that 3% is not because of the Illinois policy. So we need to deduct that. 13% minus 3% is 10%. That's why the answer is D. All right. So that is the going through the quiz, and that's hopefully now you know why I got some point, got it correct or wrong. Right. What I'm going to do now is still have about maybe I was going to do 10 minutes time, so I'm going to go back to what I left last time when I met you face to face in CCU at classroom 105. I was talking about, let me share another screen. I was talking about chapter 3, labor demand. Share this window. Let's see, share which window. Okay, let's see. Okay, hopefully. All right, hopefully I'm not sharing with you this one. All right, this chapter is about labor demand theory, and in class we have let's see, share. There we go. There we go. I think we got it. We have in class talk about introduction and firm's production function as a preparation. We got the total product, average product, and marginal product curve. And we talk about the profit maximization is basically to maximize profit, which is the difference between total revenue and total cost. And then we already analyzed the short-run hiring decision, which is like this picture showing that in the short run, profit maximizing decision is to hire 8 workers because that's where VMP is equal to wage. Let's say wage is 22. Okay? This is something I talked about back in that classroom already. And so we can derive the labor demand curve in the short run, which is part of the MRP, which is part of the VMPE curve, downward sloping portion of the VMPE curve. That's the short run demand curve for labor, right? And then we talk about a little bit about the short run demand curve for labor is going to shift out if the price of the output goes up. And we also, I skip the rest of them. I start to talk about the long run demand for labor. Employment decisions in the long run where we introduced the concept of iso-Huang curves, which is a little bit like a indifference curve in different contexts. And then you have the slope of the iso-Huang being the so-called marginal rate of technical substitution. And we talk about iso-cost curve, iso-cost lines, which is like the budget line in the previous chapter 2. Chapter 3, this is called iso-cost lines. So you got iso-cost line, meaning the combinations of capital and labor that will cost the firm the same amount of outlay. C1 versus C2, I mean C0, they are parallel because the slope of the iso-cost line are the input price ratio. And then we talk about optimal combination of inputs if the target output level, if the firm intends to produce Q0 output represented by this iso-quant, then the best combination of labor and capital is this tangency, which is cost minimizing the least cost combination. And from there, we got the cost minimization condition, which is the least cost choice is where iso cost line is tangent to the iso-quant, and marginal rate of technical substitution equals to the ratio of input prices. That is the least cost choice. And then we expand analysis from cost minimization to profit maximization in the analysis of the long-run demand for labor. You read all this. I show you in class last time that basically we start from this angle that when wage drops, a wage cut is going to reduce the marginal cost of production, encourage the firm to expand from producing 100 units to 150 units, because profit maximizing condition is marginal revenue or output price equals to marginal cost. Marginal cost has dropped to MC1, so the new profit maximizing output level is 150 units. Okay? And then if 150 units is the target, is the output that we're targeting, 150, according to the iso-quant here, the cost minimizing combination is R. So the firm is going to increase usage or demand from 25 units of labor to 50 units of labor in the long run when wage drops. Okay, and that is a detailed analysis of the substitution effect and scale effect, basically saying that from P to R involves scale effect expansion from 100 units to 150 units. That's a scale expansion. Scale effect cause the firm to use more labor, more capital. And then the substitution effect is because wage drop, so labor is cheaper than capital. Firm is going to use more labor relative to capital, even if the firm is producing the same output level, 150. So this from Q to R represents substitution effect. From P to Q represents scale effect. These two effects, they cooperate with each other. They reinforce each other. Unlike in the previous chapter, you got the income effect and substitution effect fighting against each other, offsetting each other. This time, they're compounding, they are reinforcing, they are adding up together for labor supply, I mean, labor demand in the long run definitely would increase from 25 to 50 when wage drops from W0 to W1, okay? And then two special cases of iso-quants are when the iso-quant have usually is downward sloping, we know that, negative slope. But if the iso-quant is straight line, linear, we'll have the case of perfect substitutes. When the iso-quants are very much angled or curved, like this 90-degree curve, then we know this is the case that the two inputs are perfect complements. In other words, there's no substitutability whatsoever. Zero substitution effect in this case. This is a perfect substitution effect. Okay? All right, so then move on if you read the book further, you're going to see discussion about the elasticity of substitution, which is in a way the precise estimation of the substitution effect. And you talk about this. For example, if the elasticity of substitution is 5, then a 10% increase in the ratio of wages to the price of capital would result in the firm increasing its capital to labor ratio by 50%. That's what that economic meaning of the elasticity of substitution mean five. And then you got this discussion about short-term and long-term demand curve for labor. You can see, relatively speaking, long-run demand curve will be flatter than the short-run demand curve. That means in the long run, firms' demand will be more elastic than in the short run. And then there are all these important Marshall's rules about labor demand. Basically, it says, and you got to go back to read the book, chapter 3, to get more explanation. I'm not going to explain. I'm just going to state it. I'm just going to describe it. Labor demand is more elastic when, number one, the elasticity of substitution is greater. Number two, the elasticity of demand for the firm's output is greater. Number three, labor's share in total cost of production is greater. The elasticity of supply of other factors of production, such as capital, is greater. Try to understand all these 4 rules. They are very important. That I can guarantee they're going to be asked in exam, one way or another. And then the next extension is that we have been talking about 2 inputs, labor and capital. This time we consider the factor demands when there are several inputs, more than labor, more than capital, these 2 inputs. We can talk about different inputs like skilled, unskilled labor, old and young labor, old and new machines, capital, so on and so forth. And there is an issue about cross elasticity of factor demand, which is defined as the percentage change in Xi over percentage change in, because the Xi means another demand, another demand for another factor like I, because of the percentage change in the price or wage of another factor, J, cross factor, right? And you're going to get the result. You got to make sense out of that, that if cross elasticity is positive, that means the 2 inputs are substitutes in production. On the other hand, if the cross elasticity is negative, that means the 2 inputs involved here, they are complements, right? Now, this is a picture that continue to discuss about substitutes and complements due to the change in the price of other inputs. This is the price of other inputs, not own input, not its own inputs, okay? And finally, we can introduce the concept of labor market equilibrium, which is basically when you combine supply and demand in the market, like this is the labor market, then we can arrive at the equilibrium wage W star and the equilibrium employment level like E star, okay? There's one application, policy application from reading this chapter 3, calling about the employment effects of minimum wages. And the analysis basically ends up with this case that in a competitive market, the equilibrium would have been W star and E star. But if minimum wage is imposed, that means the firm has to pay at least this wage, like W bar, which is of course greater than W star. The equilibrium wage would otherwise be. The market is thrown out of equilibrium. This is going to be distortion. This is going to be disequilibrium. And you can see in this case with wage W bar, according to labor supply curve, there are this many people that want to supply labor. But according to labor demand curve, firms only want to hire these E bar workers. Effective demand is E bar. There are E star, ES workers looking for a job. They're not going to all getting that. Only E bar will be getting the job. So you have this gap. We know this gap is called excess supply or surplus or unemployment. Okay. So the impact of minimum wage on employment is going to create unemployed people. Okay? All right, now you got some kind of a history here. You can read that further. And then there is some further discussion about impact of minimum wage on the cover and uncovered sectors, because not all sectors will be covered, will be requiring by the firm to pay minimum wage. There are some sectors, we're not talking about geographic differences. It could be in the same market, but there are some firms that they do not have to pay minimum wage. They are uncovered sectors. In that case, the analysis about the impact of minimum wage on the covered and uncovered sector is detailed on this picture. Basically, you're going to see that from the previous analysis, we know that minimum wage on the covered sector is going to create unemployment because the effective demand is going to go down according to demand curve. Without minimum wage, the employment is EC. With the minimum wage, employment is E bar. So there are these people that are not going to, they're going to be laid off, right? And so what's going to happen? People may want to move over to the uncovered sector. The uncovered sector will see an increase in labor supply. If that is the case, if workers migrate to uncovered sector, then you have this intersection showing what? Wage drop. The spillover effect is to cause the wage in the uncovered sector to drop. But on the other hand, it's also possible that some workers, they are leaving the uncovered sector to the covered sector because they thought they're going to be able to get a job and enjoy a higher wage of W bar. That could also happen. And in that direction, labor supply will go down, shift upward. And so the wage is going to go up. Essentially, what it says here is that it creates uncertainty in the uncovered sector, whether wage will go down or wage will go up. We don't know. Okay? Theoretically, of course, you read further, you're going to see some discussion about that. Finally, this section in the book is called Estimating Labor Demand. You got to read and understand this a little bit. All right. This is section 8, I suppose. All right. Anyway, it's section 8. The minimum wage issue is on section 10. And there is one more section about this problem with estimating labor demand and the impact of that. This is section 9 in the book. You don't need to worry about this. So you can strike this out. Okay? It's not going to be exam relevant about problems with estimating labor demand and with this kind of impact of wartime mobilization of men on female wages. This you don't need to worry about. They are not going to be exam relevant. So that is a quick run through for you to read more detail in chapter 3, labor demand theory. I'm going to stop this part of PPT and back to this. In conclusion here, I basically went today in this class solutions to quiz number 1 and then continue to cover up chapter 3. I complete chapter 3 already, and the rest of them is you got to work on them, you got to read them, you got to work on the practice questions, and all those. Chapter 3 is going to be in the midterm exam, which I will announce soon, but of course, you know from earlier the course schedule. I think it's something about when you come back from spring break sometime in April, I will give you more detailed date or specific date. They're going to have a midterm exam, which will cover chapter 2, 3, 4. This 3, 2, 3, 4, 3 chapters. All right, that is it for this class. I'm going to end recording. And